want to take the Minister's invitation to traverse superannuation and housing issues. Now, there was a quote from the Minister, Ms O'Neill, on 7:30, the TV program, on 16 September this year. And the Minister said, quote, "So just quickly, super funds here in Australia are very invested in this model of housing overseas, but they're not investing it in Australia because our tax system basically stops them from doing it. So we're trying to address that issue." What's the Minister talking about there, do you think?
Sorry, Senator.
Senator, I believe the Minister was talking about build to rent.
So the government wants super funds to do build to rent?
The government wants institutional investors to be confident in investing in build to rent developments in Australia, and I believe what the Minister was talking about there was the legislation that's currently before the Parliament, which is intended to encourage foreign investors to help further develop that sector, to create that environment where Australian institutional investors would participate.
Yes, that was my understanding as well, Ms Crossway. And so the bill in the Parliament would promote the idea of, it would provide a tax cut for a fund manager, most likely, a foreign fund manager, but it wouldn't provide a tax cut for a domestic super fund, would it?
Well,
no.
I think there is a second element.
That's a separate measure, isn't it? So,
deduction.
just trying to understand. So the policy of the government is to say we do want foreign fund managers to build to rent, and we've got a tax cut for them if the Parliament would agree to that. I don't think the Parliament will agree to that, but that's the policy nonetheless. And then separately, there's a housing accord policy, which wants to promote institutional investment into housing generally, including build to rent, right?
Yes.
Is that a fair characterisation?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what she was talking about. So I guess I want to now take you to that, because there has been a lot of work behind the scenes, hasn't there, with institutions and the housing space.
So when you say a lot of work...
Well, it's not a trick question.
No.
The Department and Housing Australia have worked closely with the super funds to try and get them to become institutional investors in Australian housing. Have they not, since this government was elected?
So there have been investor roundtables that the Treasurer has convened, and there's been housing, I think, has been a feature of at least a couple of those. And there has also been... so obviously Treasury has a super policy area that would be engaging with superannuation companies all the time, institutions all the time.
That's right.
And then Housing Australia has a couple of products that superannuation institutions may wish to invest in on behalf of their members. But that is a matter for them. I guess that's fine. As a suite, yes, there's been some work.
There's been a lot of measures. So let's go to the National Supply and Affordability Council, which is chaired by Miss Lloyd Hurwitz. So now this council was established by this government, was it not?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's not an act of Parliament, it's been established through administrative arrangements. Is that right?
It's an act of Parliament.
It's an act of Parliament, is it?
Correct.
Okay. And one of the first reports we did was barriers to institutional investment.
That was the interim council last year, yes.
Yep. And was that commissioned by a minister?
I believe it was part of the Accord commitments that the Commonwealth made, that they would commission this report from the interim National Housing Supply and Affordability Council, yes.
It's commissioned by the government of the day?
Yeah.
By the minister, or would that have been
it was within the Accord. I think it was technically the Treasurer, I think, who was the proponent of the Accord.
Nicholas Dowie, the Assistant Secretary of the Housing Strategy Branch. I can confirm that report was commissioned by the Minister for Housing.
Minister who?
Minister Collins at the time.
Okay. Apparently the report says institutional investment in housing typically refers to equity finance invested by institutional investors in a collection of related dwellings to provide rental services at scale. It stands in contrast to the single dwelling provided by the individual. And then recommendation 11 of this report, well, maybe there's 11 recommendations rather, which would promote institutional investment. Are these recommendations... Have these been embraced by the executive?
So those that report is being considered by government.
Been considered by government, so it's under consideration.
That's right.
Hasn't been responded to.
No, not yet.
Minister, do you think it's a good idea to get more institutional investors in place of individual people owning houses?
I think we need a range of solutions.
So you're quite open-minded to this report. Okay. So that is useful, thank you. Now, I want to go to this annoying point of detail, but it is a bit of an integrity issue. So there was I'll have to sort of walk you through this if you don't mind, but so there was a Freedom of Information request seeking all communications with Cbus Super since the last election in relation to these housing matters.
I think we've covered this in previous estimates.
We haven't actually. We did debate it in the chamber because there was an order of the Senate requiring you to explain what happened.
Yeah, right. I think you have raised it in previous Senate in estimates.
Well, not since,
with this info.
Not with this latest information. So I guess what I'm trying to work out is, I'm interested in what the department has to say about this. So effectively there was an FOI filed. The Treasurer's Office said we're not going to give you the information about the correspondence with Cbus. Then the Senate had an order for production of documents, and I thank the crossbench in the Senate for supporting that order for production of documents. The Treasurer then, on 6 November 2023, files a public interest immunity claim and says the disclosure of commercial and confidence information has the potential to damage the frankness and candour of future consultation processes, and notes that Cbus is a large superannuation fund with many members, and disclosure of information would have the potential to damage their commercial affairs, contrary to the public interest. So there's an FOI and there's an OPD. Right? One's been sought as a citizen, one's been sought as a senator, if you like. PII claims made by the Treasurer. Was that claim supported by this part of Treasury?
So the orders for production of documents are usually handled by Law Division, so Ms Wells is here. But effectively we would have provided advice, I imagine, at the time around the grounds for which you might want to seek a PII to the Treasurer. So
there's a PII claim made on 6 November 2023, signed by the Treasurer. It looks like it's an electronic signature. So you know about this one?
Yes, Senator, I do. So obviously a PII claim is always for the Minister to decide, but we do provide support to ministerial officers.
Are you able to tell us any more information about this claim?
Certainly. So I'm aware of both the FOI claim and the PI claim. Obviously, they are different criteria that are applied to both. Under the FOI, there's relevant exemptions under Part 5 of the FOI Act of which a decision maker can apply, and they often do. And then under the PPI considerations, obviously that's a public interest test. There's an open list of guidance around the kind of considerations there in the official guide for witnesses, but that is an open list. I think it's probably being taken as common practice across successive governments that commercial in confidence or stakeholder consults that may prejudice or lead to stakeholders not giving frank and fearless advice would be common grounds that would support a PII claim.
Okay. So the Senate itself ordered the production of this document, okay, and it was resisted by the Treasurer with this PII claim. The only reason these documents were made available was because of the Information Commissioner. Okay, so the Information Commissioner said, I do not accept that the remaining material would cause detriment if it were disclosed. The remaining material does not contain specific commercial information about the fund, rather it just sets out the concerns about the operation of a particular area of superannuation regulation. So the Information Commissioner has said that the Treasurer's PII claim did not contain any commercial information.
So, no, the Information Commissioner's findings were in relation to the FOI scheme, not the PII claim.
No, but they're identical. They're seeking the same information.
The criteria are different.
They're seeking the same information.
Different criteria.
And actually,
I think you've got to be really careful I think, because we're, on the record here, like this PII claim has been made over correspondence between Cbus and the Treasurer, okay, which was identical to the FOI, right? The FOI and OPD, same material, covers the same territory.
Yeah, I know, but
so
the
PII
Information
claim
Commissioner doesn't have jurisdiction over
OPDs.
the Parliament.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to make is because the Information Commissioner has forced the release of these documents, we now know that they didn't contain any commercial and confidence information. So I guess what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is, and I accept your evidence, Ms Wells, that it's up for the Treasurer to make his own claims, right? He's been prepared to do that for Cbus. I think that's extraordinary, but that's his prerogative. But does the department give the Treasurer advice about this? I mean, who's made the judgment that the correspondence between Cbus and the government was commercial in confidence when it wasn't?
Well, for the FOI claim, that would be for the decision maker to make that judgment, and they would normally, as a matter of procedure, go out and consult with anyone or anyone's material that may be impacted by an FOI claim, and they'd take advice from other impacted parties as to whether that's suitable for release. I'd probably also add that further, the Information Commissioner did also say specifically in that decision that decision itself on the FOI to release that document was not relevant to the public interest immunity claim. So that was specifically called out in their decision as well.
So, as you may recall, well, I'm not sure that's really... Sorry, I mean, you answered the questions how you'd like to, but I think my question to you was, did the department provide information to the Treasurer when he was preparing this claim?
At standard practice, we normally would.
Okay. So the department's view was, Ms Anderson, that this was...
Well, they provide advice to the Treasurer. I don't think we go to the nature of that advice.
You don't want to say?
But, well, I'm just talking you through the process here, and ultimately, as all PII claims are, they're a matter for the Minister in charge of that area.
But I guess my question is, or maybe you don't want to answer, is...
We're answering all of your questions, Senator Bragg.
Did the department agree that it was commercial in confidence?
So the public interest and immunity claim was, we look at the general public interest here, and there was a decision, there were grounds for a decision that we believed that was the Treasurer's decision, not the department's, and it is with relation to the frankness and candour of consultation processes undertaken by Treasury. So we thought there were grounds. It was open to the Treasurer to make a decision, and I think it's entirely different sort of criteria that we're bringing to bear. Obviously, same documents and similar outcome in terms of what you're seeking, but I think there were grounds for that decision, and again, I wasn't party to our advice, but I imagine that was what it said, and Ms Wells will correct me if I get any of that incorrect.
Okay, so effectively, just to step through this, so there's an effort to try and recover what correspondence has happened in secret between Cbus and the government, right? The OPD is successful, FOI happens concurrently. I appeal to the Information Commissioner as a citizen, effectively, and the Information Commissioner finds in my favour. Therefore, the document is released, and the Information Commissioner, whilst making no direct judgment about the Treasurer's PII claim, clearly a typical person would look at that and say, well, the Information Commissioner has said in his own words, or their own words, that doesn't appear to be anything commercial in confidence here, so we will now grant the release of the document, okay? That's what's happened here. I mean, it's not a very good look, is it?
Well, Senator, I think Treasury does have a responsibility to those. So looking at it one step back, away from the specifics of this situation, we do have a responsibility to ensure that any entity can provide us information in confidence if they so wish, in order to provide feedback or expert input into consultation processes. So
yeah, I understand
that is something we would like to protect, because I think it is very important that companies are able to do that.
Okay.
If the judgment call in this instance, the Information Commissioner had a different judgment to what the original decision maker in this one had for the FOI, then
so your preference
we accept that.
Your preference would have been to conceal it?
No, my preference is definitely not to conceal it. My preference is to look out for what the public interest is in all the different circumstances. And if a company tells us they wish to seek something wish to provide us something confidentially, that is something we need to take seriously.
But can I ask you then, and I'd be grateful for your advice on this as well, Minister. I mean, were you concerned that, given Cbus is chaired by Mr Wayne Swan, who's the President of the Labor Party as well, the governing party, that it may be prudent to err on the side of transparency here rather than concealment? Minister?
Well, I
do you not think it was a bad look?
Well, I think
it's secret lobbying.
It's not secret lobbying.
Ready to respond.
I think the rules are there. FOI should be applied, and ministers make decisions about PII claims. It's
you think it was a good
the
claim
rules
to
should
make?
apply. The criteria should be met, and if you disagree with that, you can have an appeal. In which case you have, and the Information Commissioner has made a determination. So the system is working.
Thanks very much. So just finishing up where we were before on the Cbus lobbying. So are you aware of what exactly the briefing note was that was provided to the government?
I just had a look at it now.
So you know what it is?
Well, I've only just seen it on, I think, in a media report. I haven't actually read it.
Yeah.
But look, it looks to me like a briefing note.
It was a briefing note from Cbus. They wanted to be exempted from disclosing certain fees to do with property investments. So was this considered by this part of the department?
So, Senator, we were not the decision maker for either the FOI or the PII, as far as I understand it.
Did you receive this briefing note from Cbus?
The Housing Division would have received that in the context of the HAFF, I believe, yes, because it was a part of the HAFF legislation consultation. Unfortunately, I think some of the people at the table were not.
It's not.
Sorry.
It says here, superannuation funds are required to disclose fees and costs in line with ASIC Regulatory Guide 97 disclosure of fees and costs. And then it goes on to complain about the disclosure of costs in these regulatory guides. So,
yes.
Senator, Revenue Group have the area that looks after superannuation policy, so they may have seen that briefing note if it came to the department.
So who received the briefing then?
Sorry, I was confused between what we were discussing before.
Yeah, so this is the briefing note from Cbus?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you receive this note?
I didn't. As Ms Crosswaite said, we'd have to check with our Revenue Group colleagues as to whether our superannuation
hang on.
did.
You told me you were involved in preparing the PII claim.
No.
Sorry.
Over here.
The legal official working on behalf of the department as a whole prepared the advice on the PII.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. But the substantial briefing note from Cbus was transmitted to Markets.
Well, it looks like it's one page to me, but
so it was given to Markets Group, was it? Didn't come to you.
I don't know that we can answer that for you. We'll take that on notice as to who received the briefing note.
Just so I can finish on this issue, so Ms Wells, this briefing note was in your custody, I imagine, but it was handled by Markets.
Senator, normally when we get an FOI request, we will do a whole of departmental search over our IT system to see what's in scope of the request. And once that comes through, that will go to the decision maker. Now, in this case, the decision maker was the Minister's office, so we would not have directly handled that information.
Okay, so should I ask Markets about this Deputy Secretary?
I'm not trying to be overly bureaucratic on you, but our super area has moved from Markets to Revenue Group, just to make me look even more foolish. But so I think it would be Revenue Group that you would address that.
I just wanted to ask them some questions about the actual request that was given to them.
Yes. Why don't we take that on notice, and I'll speak to my colleagues and make sure that somebody's ready to answer that question for you.
Just from a process point of view, Ms Wells, because I think it would be helpful, because I think most people would look at it and say, well, the Information Commissioner found this wasn't commercial in confidence and forced its release. As a result, that would cause most people to look at the PII claim and say, well, that PII claim wasn't correct. So what processes will change in the future to ensure that people don't sign incorrect or misleading PII claims?
Well, the PII claim is a matter for the minister, not for the department.
So what processes will you put in place to ensure you don't make false PII claims?
Well, I don't think that has been found to be false.
Well, this is not commercial in confidence. This is lobbying.
The Information Commissioner
This is
has
lobbying.
made a finding in relation to the FOI Act. But they don't have... Yeah, I know, but they don't... They're different criteria and they don't have jurisdiction over the Parliament.
So are you going to change anything as a result of this?
Well, the PII process is established by the Parliament.
No, but I'm asking the department if it regrets being party to a false claim made by the Treasurer.
Well, you are assuming that. They have supported
correct,
the
Minister.
Treasurer with advice around the handling of a PII claim.
Sounds like you're not going to do anything.
departments are going to continue to support their ministers in relation to the extraordinary amount of OPDs that go through the Senate. You know, OPDs used to be very rare. It used to be a handful of them. And the only reason we've got about 100 of them pretty much every sitting week is because we changed motions. And so instead of being able to move a motion, people now seek OPDs, and so they don't carry the same significance that they used to. And I think that's a shame for the Parliament.
But I think it's a shame.
For who? They don't carry the same significance for who?
Well, for the Parliament, because they've
OPDs.
done all the time.
Well,
They're
they
not.
should. They should, because when an
Well,
OPD is
they
agreed
don't.
by the Senate, it has the authority of the
just-
Senate.
No,
so
they
the
don't.
department does not have the liberty of making a judgment
Well, it's
call
not the department.
about whether it takes it
It's
seriously
not
or
the
not.
department.
Okay, so Senator Bragg.
Okay, so sounds like on that issue, just to conclude that matter, that the government recognises that the claim made by the Treasurer, which was effectively overturned by the Information Commissioner, is just a fact of life, and there'll be no reviews or changes in Treasury processes as a result of this pretty unseemly affair.
So I don't accept the premise that the Information Commissioner overturned a PII. He overturned an FOI decision, but the department has an advisory role in these instances. As I said, we understand there was a ground upon which the Treasurer could have claimed PII. He decided to do that. We are not usurping any decision-making role on behalf of the Treasurer with regard to PIIs. That would be inappropriate. We simply provide advice on the process and take forth whatever the decision is in terms of administrative support for that decision.
All right, fair enough. Look, I just want to